Donald Trump has chosen to meet with all of the TV executives who run networks that he believes were out to get him.
I think just as interestingly, they have decided to go to this meeting with him.
How do you say no?
Yeah, how do you say no? But it really feels like a scene from Game of Thrones, where everybody is brought into the room.
That's funny.
And I mean, it's like a big comeuppance meeting. And he's basically going to sit down and talk. Now, he's been very vocal about media outlets named names that he feels have been unfair.
He has not softened his position since the election. He has on other things, but not with the media. He has doubled down in terms of the criticism and really believes they were tone deaf in not understanding what was going on in the country, and that they were so determined to get him and kill him politically that they missed the point. And
so what is the goal of this meeting? I don't.
Yeah. Like, to what end? What are we trying to accomplish here, Harvey?
I don't think there is necessarily a constructive end here. To be honest with you.
So then you'd have to admit, if there's no constructive end here, in a time where the president-elect should be doing things constructively to bring the country together and to clarify some of his positions, then this is probably a petty thing to do.
I don't know what the purpose is, and I think we got to find out what comes out of the meeting and what he ends up doing.
You just said you thought that there was no purpose.
I'm just saying that's what I think. I don't see, I don't see Jeff Zucker, who clearly I know Donald Trump has issues with from CNN, who believes that they were extremely unfair. I just don't see the two of them coming together. They've known each other because Jeff Zucker did he ran NBC while The Apprentice was on, but I just don't see, other than them coming together on anything.
So let me ask you a question then. Let's go with the initial thing that you said, that there is no purpose for this meeting.
I don't know. No. I'm just saying, based on what I know, I don't see anything constructive coming out of it. That's what I said.
Well, you said I didn't think there was one. But anyway, my point is that if Trump is just trying to sit people down and do a ha-ha, I told you so.
I don't know that it's that. That seems bizarre. That it's
I'm not sure that they would buy in for that.
Yeah, that would be a short meeting. I just can't imagine
maybe
that's
it will
the
be
case.
a short meeting.
Because a bunch of them are showing up. I think everybody, I believe the CBS news president is not, but everybody else is.
If the president calls upon you, the president-elect, whatever he'll be, president, you have to go. You have to go. So the fact that they're going is not, neither here nor there, but the fact that he's calling something makes you think that it's of great importance. And if it's not, you'd have to wonder why he would do something so bizarre.
Well, actually, hold on. I don't know why he's doing it, but if it's for, which is what I thought he was doing, now that he's president and the policies that he puts forth and the things that he wanted out, he got killed by them when he was running, and they wouldn't even listen to anything he's saying. If he's sitting him down going, look, here are the things I want to do, and the way they cover it is the way we ingest it at home. So if he keeps trying to do things, the policies he wants to put forth, and the media covers it, how terrible it is, and a lot of the truth he wants out there isn't out there, if that's what he's trying to talk to them about their future coverage of his presidency, I don't think it's a bad idea. Now, I don't know that's what he's doing. That's what I assumed he was doing.
But if he is
to talk to them about covering him as a president,
if he is doing
what he's trying to do.
If he is doing that, it's an extremely bad idea, and it's something that's almost sinister to me, because the president of the United States should not be trying to control the media and massage the.
You can't control the media. You can say to them, "Hey,
you can't," but they all try.
But I was just going to say they all do, and Trump's famous for that.
What Trump can do then is Trump can hold a press conference and he can say, "Listen, this is the blah blah blah." But to have a closed door meeting where he tries to wield some sort of influence over them is troubling.
Well, except here's the thing. What I was told was this is a big meeting, so it's not like calling individual people in. So you can't do what you're suggesting if you're doing it with 20 people in the room. And my understanding is there may be up to 20 people.
Who, by the way, are going to turn around and as soon as they walk out, they're going to report on what was said.
That's right. So I don't think it's sinister.
You have to say it
but
with that.
It is going to be interesting because, look, here's my feeling. Trump is never going to win the media over. They will not win. He will not win them over. So at a point, you got to just say, look, on a weird level, the media helped him win because they helped galvanize his base. And I think maybe that's the most he can expect. I don't think ever he is going to turn them around.
Hi, Asia Raison, Memphis, Tennessee. I've been thinking about it for a lot of time now, and I'm wondering whether or not he's trying to go in and be what we've heard of a sore winner. In some situations, perhaps he's going in and maybe it is I told you so. Maybe it is, this is what I want, this is what I expect. I don't know. I mean, as we look into it.
Asia,
Yes.
I do think I told you so in some form or fashion is going to come out of this
that
meeting.
will absolutely be said.
Yeah.
And then it'll try to add on some other stuff.